Right there. Welcome to the junk room. I've sent you a link with a video that I've already made on internal economies of scale. So what we're going to do is a quick one on internal diseconomies of scale. So it's the same. It's the same basic idea. And what's going on here? Is that scale is increasing, and we said that's an increase in your capacity. It's an increase in all factors of production, because what we're talking about here is a long-run concept. So what we said is that a firm can expand. A firm can expand up to a certain point, and generate economies of scale. And that was on the last video, and it's in your notes. But it's that idea that initially we have a particular set of factors of production that we're stuck with at the moment. As we expand in the short run, gradually the cost of using them goes up. The firm faces diminishing returns. Then what hopefully happens is it can expand to a larger scale like that. SRAC2 that has more fixed factor production, more of the previously fixed factor production. We acquire more in the long run, and again like that. And we said, well, great, that's our idea of economies of scale. A long-run average cost curve looks like that. But what we said is that there is a risk, at least, that we may, in fact, grow too larger. That when we look at large organisations, then there are a variety of problems that come with running them once they reach a particular scale. And we looked at a number, and we looked particularly at multinationals, and we said that with these particularly, you end up with problems with communications. You've got to manage it across different time zones. That can be a problem. It slows things down, so that damages productivity. Other problems are that you have to rely more on kind of written forms of communication rather than face to face, and therefore kind of messages get lost or lost in translation at least. And as a result of which, if communications are poor, what may happen is that productivity gets hit. There may be problems with coordinating the business, so trying to get its resources in the right place at the right time. As a result of which, what's going to happen is that potentially we misorder stock, or stock arrives at the wrong time, or we don't get components needed for production, and all those sorts of things can then lead again to waste, which again can drive up your unit costs. And when you're talking about economies, discount scale, or economies scale for that matter, it's very important to relate it back to this idea of what's happening to unit costs. We said that larger organisations can be harder to control, and there's a variety of things that are going on there, but potentially just making sure that your staff are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I remember there were stories of British Leyland back when it was state-run in Oxford, down the Cali Road, and what used to happen is that people would simply drive up from local garages with vans, and the staff there would chuck spare parts into the back of the van. They were just nicking them. So they had no idea of what was going on. And somebody I used to know worked for a company called Desking Systems, and their stock control was so poor that when she checked on the inventory once, they had minus 17 of one particular spare part. So organisations can be difficult to control. If you can't control it, again, what's going to happen is the unit costs are going to rise. So again, what's going to happen is it's going to lead to inefficiency. It's going to lead to waste again, damage, and so on. And we also looked at that. Intel video. And we said that demotivation. Certainly from the implications of that video. Was that in a large organisation you can get bored. You can feel unimportant. Because you're just a small cog in a giant machine. What that can do, is it can mean that you're more likely to take time off sick. Which obviously drives up costs. You're more likely to leave. That's what's called labour turnover, which is the proportion of the firm's employees that leave each year. They have to be replaced, which is expensive. The process takes time. You've got to retrain them, and so on and so forth. So the argument, therefore, is that there is a danger that for some organisations, you might get too big. and therefore, although we may have, although we may have economies of scale up to a certain point, so that's where we've got our internal economies of scale. After a point, what starts to happen is that your short-run average cost curves start being driven upwards as a result of these problems with communication, coordination, and control, and as a result of which, of course, your long-run average cost also increases. So therefore, most firms would prefer to avoid operating too far on that bit. You might put up with it for a bit if there are a lot of sales and customers and orders to be met, you might put up with it. But you would probably try and avoid it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But therefore, in classic terms, if that's your long-run average cost curve, up to that point we have internal economies of scale. After that point, we have internal diseconomies of scale. This thing is, on this diagram, unhelpfully, it makes no sense when you see it on this diagram. It's called the minimum efficient scale. In reality, it's stupid because it's the only efficient scale. By minimum efficient scale, we mean that it's the smallest scale. In other words, it's on the output axis. It's the smallest scale, at which you can still compete. That makes more sense if you kind of start saying, well, in the real world, there are lots of things that you can do to avoid diseconomies of scale. You can decentralize. You can have incentive schemes. We looked at that clip sliding into Google, where actually the workplace design means that you probably don't feel pissed off. And as a result, a lot of research suggests that when you look at the cost structures of reasonably successful businesses anyway, or ones that have been kicking around for a while, their long-run average cost curve seems to look like this. So long-run average costs come down for a bit, and then they remain reasonably constant like that. So it's something like a car producer or something. They can generate economies of scale for a while, but after a bit, whether you produce 1 million, 1.5 million, 1.75 million cars, the cost on average remains the same. In this diagram, it's a lot easier to see this idea of the minimum efficient scale. So what we're saying is that all of these scales are efficient. X is efficient, Y is efficient, Z is efficient, because they all have this minimum cost. That's C1, your lowest cost. But X is the minimum scale. It's the smallest scale at which the firm can still be efficient. So as an organisation grows, it generates economies of scale. If it gets too big, it may have diseconomies of scale. A firm would want to avoid those and would therefore put in place, or probably put in place, management techniques to try and avoid those sorts of costs. In a minute, I'll do external economies and diseconomies.